To talk about this latest escalation, we're joined by Eric Mandel, Director of the Middle East Political Information Network. Eric, thank you for being with us tonight.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Eric, the IDF bolstering forces along Gaza today. Are Israel and Hamas on the brink of another war?
Nobody really knows. I was there in 2014. I was there in 2012. I was there in 2008. It doesn't take much for this to get going. So from the Israeli point of view, Israel does not want to go in. It does not have a strategy to end the terrorists striking for them because they don't want to get rid of Hamas. And the Israeli military thinks that what would replace it could be even worse. It could be anarchy. From the Palestinian, the Hamas point of view, what they're thinking about is they're trying to still deflect attention away from the economic disasters that they have created there. There's a prisoner revolt because Israel has blocked jamming of cell phones that have been gotten into prisons, and there's been stabbings of Israeli guards. And also the Qatari cash has dried up. So what could push this off from an Israeli point of view? If they hit Ben Gurion Airport, if there are fatalities in Tel Aviv, those are two things, or they hit a kindergarten anywhere, a school bus, that could really set it off.
But Eric, this is not for lack of trying on Hamas's part. The reason that these targets, well, most of them, not Ben Gurion because it hasn't hit that range, but it's not because they don't want to try and hit a kindergarten. They certainly have been lobbing rockets at Israel throughout the day. Those rockets intercepted by the Iron Dome, and I understand more Iron Dome battalions are being deployed. So why does it matter what Hamas actually hits when the intention is clearly there?
Because I think Israel does not look at Hamas as an existential threat. I think its focus is still in the north, and that is the existential threat. Iran, in Syria, Hezbollah, that is in Iraq. What makes the connection here is Hamas gets its weapons from Iran, and the question was, did Iran direct the last missile that came in? Did they have that much influence on Hamas, or obviously we know they have on Palestinian Islamic Jihad?
Well, that's an excellent point, because there were reports, in fact, that this was directed by Hamas. Reports from someone in Hamas saying that that this was directed by Iran, that Iran gave this order, not necessarily to the top leadership of Hamas, but to someone in the faction to carry this out. Have you heard of that? What do you make of that?
That's what I heard. I think at this point that Iran could be involved. It could be related to the Israeli election. But I think the proof that Israel is not really wanting to make this into a major war is they're basically calling the people in the buildings they're going to hit, including the terrorists in there, because they don't want this to escalate. And the Egyptians don't want it to escalate. There's the other war that's going on here that nobody's talking about between Fatah and Hamas, and it's basically a race to who can, condemn or kill more Israelis. And so between those two groups, they're also fighting to show who's tougher. And so you really have multiple layers of what's going on here. And again, one mistake could turn this totally out of control. And then if Israel has to go and mow the grass again, how much will it go? I don't think they have an appetite to go in to do what really needs to be done, if you will, because what really needs to be done, the law of unintended consequences could make this even a more dangerous situation. Israel does not want to reoccupy Gaza.
Let's bring in Jessie Jane Duff now. She's a retired gunnery sergeant with the U.S. Marine Corps, now a senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research. Jessie, how does Israel tackle this? It's got rockets landing in central Israel, demolishing homes, injuring people, and rockets being launched into southern Israel, intercepted, as we mentioned, but again, not for lack of trying from Hamas. How does Israel handle this, in your opinion?
Well, there's several aspects here. First of all, it's imperative that they remain a sovereign state of the Golan Heights. When you're looking at the Golan Heights, that is one of the most protective measures they have against the Iranian infiltration, whether it be through Syria or Iraq, because Iran has made their presence very strong in Syria. The opportunity there with the civil war was Iran's ideal opportunity to come in and help. But they also have to have this missile defense system that we have been working with very closely with Israel Israel. It is no irony that we have had our troops over there working with them in the missile defense fields to ensure that there is a presence of U.S. forces, that they are well aware that this is our ally and we will defend them against any attack by Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, or whomever decides to go after Israel. The U.S. presence is there. And I don't think that we are doing this in a way that is obnoxious. We're not doing this in a way to rattle the swords, but we're letting them know in a very subtle and very clear manner. And also our president has made it very clear that Israel is our ally. Nobody will mess with Israel without the U.S. having some say or some intervention on some level.
Erica, Jesse makes the point of the Golan Heights. Of course, to clarify, that's in the north. It's not really linked to this situation, except for the common threat of Iran and Hamas and perhaps even Hezbollah, in terms of those all having the same agenda against Israel here. What is the agenda here? Do you think this is all part of what people think is the idea to try and draw Israel into a multi-front war? Because Hezbollah has been making threats against Israel. Iran continues to. There's obviously a lot of anger from the likes of Syria after the president declared or recognized, rather, Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Is that the idea here, to maybe open up a multi-front war?
I do. I think, though, we have to get out of our Western perspective of looking at this as of now. I think Iran and the Middle East, the Arab countries, the Muslim countries, Iran is obviously Muslim but not Arab, look at these things in years, decades, centuries. They're looking to build the presence, to build the strength. They work through proxies. Hezbollah, they totally control. They have the popular mobilization units in Syria. They influence in the south from Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas. And they would like to destabilize Jordan and totally surround Israel. And they want a naval base in Lebanon also. So this is the things that they're building upon. But it may not be of the moment. But what needs to be done is to, the first thing right now is not so much Gaza, but I think your other guest was really talking about maybe the most important thing is not to have a permanent entrenchment of Iran in Syria,
sure.
And that's where American troops are, and I think that's incredibly important. The question here is that President Trump has left troops in Al-Tanf, which is a area that prevents the corridor from Iran to Iraq through Syria into Lebanon, which would be able to bring sophisticated missiles in there. But there's only a few hundred American troops in these places, and Israel never wants anybody fighting for it.
Yeah.
It does not want American troops there, but American troops, their presence there is an American national security interest.
Jesse, the Israeli Defense Force bolstering forces along the Gaza border. From a military perspective, what do you read into that?
Well, it's critical because the Gaza is what is highly coveted by Syria. They want this land back. And the reason that the Iranians are present there now, this would give them a great land corridor to the Mediterranean. That is their dream.
No, just to clarify.
Yes.
Just to clarify, this is along the Gaza border with Israel, where there is the Hamas
yes.
and Palestinian enclave. So we do know that the Israeli Defense Force has been building up troops, amassing more and more forces on the border with Gaza. From a military strategy, what do you think the signals? Does it signal a potential ground invasion, or is this just a show of strength and perhaps a warning, a flexing of military muscle, if you will?
Yeah, my apologies for misunderstanding, but yes, absolutely, it's both. I think it's saying, one, we're here. Two, we're not afraid. And if there is going to be an additional strikes, I think at some point Israel's obviously going to take action. They're not a country that's going to sit back and have their people plummeted with missiles, landing in bedrooms and landing in the alleyways of their homes. This is just inappropriate, and they know this. At some point, they have to flex back, and they do it very strategically. They do it in a manner that is a warning signal, because otherwise Israel is going to be attacked for having human rights violations, or hitting civilians, or hitting children. They always have to be conscientious about their strikes. Meanwhile, Hamas has no conscience in how they strike. The international community rarely gets behind Israel, and that is what's so upsetting to all of us on the Western side. And yes, it is quite obvious we're taking this on from a Western perspective, but the ideology that they're facing has no ambition of being honest or having integrity, whereas Israel always has to.
Yeah, you make a good point, Jesse, about the IDF always trying to minimize civilian casualties, while the enemy tries to maximize them, using them as human shields. It does make any kind of military operation for the IDF all the more complex. Thank you so much, Jessie Jane Duff and Eric Mandel. Appreciate it. Thank you both for your time.